Hi everyone. Just some reflections on the nature of God. I was having some discussions, and I wanted to, air out some of my thoughts. And please leave your comments. If you like these type of videos, please subscribe and keep up for the next ones. These discussions are really fun, and I love hearing back from people. So leave your comments. Make a response video or subscribe. So the first question is, what is God? Who is God? How do we know, if it wasn't for revelation, let's say that we've determined the revelations are not true, what do we know about God? Do we know anything about God? Do we know God is one? Do we know God is more than one? How do we know God is only one? Islam purports that God is one and only one. Tawheed, as it's called, the principle of Tawheed. But how do we know this? The Quran says if there was, more than one God, there'd be, there'd be chaos, paraphrasing. But is this really true? Like, if there was more than one God, couldn't they get along? Like take turns driving a car. One day one person does, the other day the other person does. Couldn't they, agree upon a plan? Couldn't they agree on a certain way of doing things? I mean, we find even with like birds, for example, you have swarms of birds, thousands of birds flying together, or hundreds, let's say, not thousands, and they don't bump into each other, and they're flying, perfectly. How do they do that? Looking at blind termites, they're able to build gigantic homes for themselves. They're completely blind. They're able to do that. Humans were able to cooperate in groups to build successful organizations and families. Why is it the case that God would have to only be one? It doesn't have to be the case, does it? Like, does God just have to be one? The other thing, if God was here before in the beginning and He made all of us, how do we know He's still there? What if He died? What if He went to sleep? What if He's gone? What if He's no longer interested in this world? What if He just decided to stop answering, stop being involved? Is it necessarily the case that God has to be existing in order for the world to exist? Why is that? Couldn't God make a world that's self-sustainable? You know what I mean? Just thinking in terms of humans, I mean, we make machines that go on by themselves, and we just leave them and they continue. Why does God necessarily have to exist, or even be involved? Does God even know that we exist? Is He even aware that we exist? I mean, if you look at the previous revelation, the previous holy books, they all say that, God made His intentional, it was His intention to make us and to be involved with the humans. But we don't see that when we look at, life. Some people would say, like, a caterpillar turning into a butterfly is a proof of God. Is a caterpillar turning into a butterfly a proof of God? How about our eyes? Our eyes, a consciousness. And the answer to this is, well, let's talk about it. As time goes by, we're understanding more and more purely natural causes and reasons behind all of these things. Darwin was amazed by the eyes, and he said it confounded him. And like, how could something like this evolve gradually? It seemed like such an amazing thing. In the 150 years since Darwin came up with his book, explaining evolution by natural selection, actually we've learned a lot about the development of the human eye. We found examples of different eye evolution of different stages of eye evolution in many different animals. So you have animals with a very simple photoreceptors that can only detect light, like brightness, and then you have different stages of eye development, including humans. Not only that, the human eye has a flaw. It has a blind spot. You can do a quick Google search for blind spot eye, and you can do a test for yourself. You cover one eye and you move closer and backwards, and you'll find that while you're looking at a certain spot, the other spot will disappear. And the reason for this is because of the optic nerve and the way it evolved. Evolution cannot restart from scratch. It has to continue building on what's already existing. It's just kind of a gradual process of reformation, right? It's not, you can't go back to the drawing board. However, when we look at another animal, for example, the octopus, which evolved completely differently, it doesn't have a blind spot in its eye. So did God, if you believe God intentionally designed us this way, did He intentionally design us with the eyeball with the blind spot for humans? Why would God do that? Like, does that make sense? Like, another question. Okay, consciousness. Let's talk about consciousness. Consciousness is not fully understood just yet, but this is one more thing where, as time goes by, we learn more and more about our history and about how we got here and how we work, and it's just a matter of time before we perfectly understand consciousness. I mean, we don't know exactly, but we can look at one thing. There's a nice documentary, Nova PBS documentary called "What Darwin Never Knew," and it talks about in the last 150 years since Darwin discovered his theory, the great advancements we've made in understanding evolution and building on it. So instead of rejecting the theory and throwing it out, it's been kind of like proven over and over and over again from multiple fields. One of the questions was, for example, why is the human brain more developed than like chimp brains? We came from chimps, or an ancestor of chimps, let's say. And one thing this guy discovered is that when studying, he was studying a different disease that his brother had. It was a disease, a genetic disease, where the bones wouldn't recover properly after an accident. And he noticed something interesting that was different between chimps and humans, which is we have a gene that allows our brain a skull rather, to grow into a much bigger size. And the reason for that is because a bite strength is much less. So with chimps, they have a much greater bite strength, and that causes the skull to fuse early on, like it fuses together and it becomes much smaller, not giving very much room for a bigger brain. So unintentionally, the guy might have stumbled upon the reason for us having greater, more advanced brains, because what happens with humans is the gene for the bite size, the bite strength was less. Evolution happens by two reasons, by two methods, just to simplify, and I'm not an expert. One is by, there's a mother and father, and the genes are mixed together, right? They're shuffled. And for humans, we have 23 chromosomes, and we get one from the mother and one from your father, and then one of them becomes recessive, meaning it's not active, and one becomes dominant, which becomes active. So mixing these genes together has different effects. The other thing is random mutations, also known as copying errors. Sometimes, DNA doesn't copy perfectly, and there's something called copying errors, which is why sometimes people have these rare genetic diseases where neither parent has it and they don't know how it happened, but basically a certain combination of genes causes health issues. So through this process of random mutation, which is basically copying error, and the mother and father's genes mixing, it turned out that one of the descendants of the chimp, basically, which ended up being humans, we have much less of a bite strength, but that allowed the brains to grow bigger, a skull to grow bigger, allowing more space for the brain. This may actually be one part of the puzzle of how humans ended up having greater mental capacity than, let's say, chimps. Maybe it's something as random as a bite strength, right? So yeah, that's one piece of the puzzle, and as time goes by, I'm sure we'll figure out consciousness. It's not a problem. Humans also have other design flaws. So back injury, we're prone to back injury. We tend to, this tends to happen a lot. What else? Oh yeah, like I always found it strange how babies can, and kids can, and even adults can just die from a small piece of food in the throat. We have this we seem so fragile. Like we have this throat that if you get a little bit of food stuck in there, you can just completely die from that. It's insane. As well, the human birth canal is very narrow. Again, going back to the fact that evolution cannot restart from scratch, many babies die in the birth process, and other than the fact that we intervene and we save them. So again, this is another design flaw. A better way of having birth would be through the stomach. That's a more straightforward process. But again, you can't restart evolution. It has to continue building from past steps. So this is another human design flaw, which again doesn't look like God perfectly designed this, but rather a gradual improvement, over time. The other misconception people have about evolution is it goes from worse to better. It doesn't work like that. Humans are not like the greatest thing ever evolved and everything else is just crap. No, it doesn't work like that. Evolution is all about a gradual refinement that gives small improvement in the environment that we have. So for example, let's say at a certain point in time in a certain environment, you would actually benefit from being physically stronger. So the physically stronger people would survive over time, and they would become the dominant species, right? And over time, the weaker ones would not survive. So that's kind of like what it is: a small, tiny improvement or benefit that you have over someone else is due to the fact that you have certain characteristics is what would over time lead you to end up the way you are. And humans, through process of evolution, our benefit has been the greater mental capacity, right? And that's what's helped us to survive over other creatures. But other creatures still survive because they're still there, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's like saying just because we came from Africa, why do Africans still exist? No, I mean, obviously, animal will continue to exist. It's only when you isolate them from the other population that they will start to specialize and to grow differently. So Dawkins discussed this in his book, The Greatest Show on Earth, about islands and how islands or geographic barriers is what allows different species to specialize and to differentiate themselves. If the world was one big huge island and then there was all inbreeding, there wouldn't be any sort of, you wouldn't see the type of evolution and differentiation of different species. The other thing about the idea of God is how animals have to eat each other to survive. I mean, Darwin was amazed by the parasitic wasp, and how he was like, I can't believe God would make an animal that would put its eggs inside another living creature and eat it up from the inside. Like, he found that quite disturbing. And as well, if you look at, like, for example, cougars and tigers and cheetahs, the only way they can survive is by maiming and killing and eating and tearing to pieces another animal. And usually it'd be like a baby. So like a baby deer that can't run as fast, it would get like slaughtered by the tiger. And the tiger's not doing anything evil, it's just trying to survive. And that's the way it is, right? Like, why would God design the world with so much natural suffering? Like, even if you look at the lions, another thing about lions is, let's say the alpha male is killed by a competitor, so the male's getting kind of old, a new male comes along, it kills the previous male, and then the next thing it'll do is it'll actually go and kill all of the cubs from the previous father. It will go and kill all of the babies, because that's just the way it is, and it wants it wants its genes to be propagated, right? It's programmed that way. And so why would God design so much suffering to the world like that? Animals is an example, right? If you look at humans, like there's like large number of humans, more than 1/2 of the population of the world, some say, like more than 3 billion people that have to survive on $2.50 a day. Like, again, is this all humans' fault? Like, or is this actually, if it's by design, it's very strange. Like, God doesn't seem to be a very nice person to do all this by design, right? Like, is he doing all this so we can all suffer and then he can compensate some of us once we grovel before him with paradise? Like, he wants all of us to go through all of this suffering. Like, if you look at animals, they go through all this suffering and then they don't go to hell or heaven. Like, they're just like tortured in life, eaten alive and killing each other and basically just surviving. And then at the end of it, there's no hell for them. But humans, we go through all this and then we have hell waiting for us if we end up in the wrong religion. Like, why would God do that? Why would God want to torture us like that, right? And did we really have a choice about any of this? Which one of you chose to come to life? Which one of you chose that you'd wanted to go through all this and then eventually go to heaven or hell? I didn't choose this. I didn't make this choice. Again, it makes you wonder, right? If there was a building and there was a building down the street and I could see the building had problems and it was going to fall down, and I see you, you're my friend, I see you walking by and going in the building and I don't say anything. I just let you walk in the building and then it crashes on you and you're killed. What kind of person would I be? What kind of human would I be to allow you to be killed in this way? And the same way, like, if God knew he was going to make us and so many of us are going to end up in the wrong religion, we're all going to suffer in this life and then we're going to go to hell, what kind of God is that? Like, why would couldn't he make a world where less people go to hell, more people have a happy life? Like, we expect more from God being the benevolent, perfect being that we think he is. If he's an evil God, I mean, that's a different story altogether, but that's not what religions claim today, right? Religions claim that God is, benevolent, merciful, loving, yet he made us knowing we're all going to go to hell. Why? Because we have free will? Well, a lot of our free will is actually, based on our genes and based on our brains and based on our bodies and based on the way we are. Humans are greedy, selfish, dirty creatures, nasty creatures. we take advantage of others, we hurt others, we kill others. God made us knowing this, and then he's saying, oh, now I'm going to put you in hell. Does that even make any sense? Like, you're not grateful enough for the hell that I put in, for the life I put you in, so I'm going to put you in hell. Like, just some things to, ponder on. Like, obviously all of this makes much more sense if you think that none of this was by design and God just, there's no God, and if there's a God, he wasn't involved, and all of this just happened to be the case, that it is the way it is to, to the process of life that we are in. But if you believe in a God that did all of this, like, it just makes you scratch your head. Like, it doesn't seem like a very nice God, and it doesn't make sense that God designed us, like all of these things, excuse me. So just want to get my thoughts out there and, hear back from people and have a discussion. Thanks. Bye.